Good morning. Thank you for inviting me into this new venue. I know that we've all been attending services in different ways over this past year, and it has been an opportunity for us to engage one of the strongest powers that we have, and it's one that I'm going to ask you to play with me today, and that is with your power of imagination. It's a very powerful power that we have, and it will bring us to new and brighter places. So I'm going to ask you to entertain some questions. I'm going to throw some out there and ask you to consider them. So how does a balloon feel when it's inflated and it reaches its full potential and then it's let go to fly into the universe? How does a mountain feel when its peaks brush against the sky? How does the sunrise feel when the radiance of its glow breaks out into a new day? How does the eagle feel when the air currents push her further and further and higher in perfect motion with the breath of the universe? How do trees feel? How do they feel in the spring when they push forth that beautiful young green glow that they have? How does it feel to touch a rainbow and to slide through its colors? And how does it feel when I clear away the cobwebs of my mind and come to the realization that I am a part of it all? Interesting questions to ponder. Every year in late February, early March, the Lenten season begins. Lent is the name given in the Abrahamic tradition to a period of fasting and abstinence, a time of going apart. All of the great prophets in those traditions have taken the time to go apart for a while before they set out on their journeys of life. The word Lent comes from the Anglo-Saxon word for spring, which in turn is derived from the Germanic root for long, a reference to the fact that in the spring, the days become noticeably longer and longer, and today is going to be the first of that longer day. Just as spring is the season for new and expanded life, Lent can be a time of spiritual rebirth and renewal. It's a time for realigning ourselves. You know, trees and flowers are not content with the blooms of last year. And if we allow ourselves to be caught up in the flow of the creative process, we experience what I call divine discontent, divine disgust, in which we feel both the possibility and the need for growth. And depending on the tradition in which you were raised, I was raised and educated in the Roman Catholic tradition, we might say, oh no, it's Lent again. I already did that. I did that last year. But a lot of mental debris can accumulate in our individual consciousness in a year. Fear, resentment, limitations, ideas that don't serve us very well find our way into our minds and hearts when we don't even notice them. And then they begin to define our life experience. An extended time away, a Lent, is an emotional and spiritual practice It can be equated to an emotional and spiritual spring cleaning. It allows us to examine the accumulated thoughts and attitudes and decide what we want to keep and what we can joyfully release and put out to the curb. When you finish spring cleaning of your physical environment, you don't expect it to remain that way in that pristine state forever. Now, I don't know about you, but if only that would happen in my world, if it would just stay neat and clean for an entire year, I would be really happy. But the year unfolds one day at a time. Things come, things stay, things go. Life happens. And item by item, the closets and the drawers fill to overflowing. The bookcases fill with more books, the piles get higher. And before you know it, it's time for another spring cleaning. Lent is like that. As more than physical beings, we move through this human experience like magnets, picking up all kinds of idle thoughts. Remember as a kid when you played with magnets and you had those little metal filings, and when you ran the magnet across a piece of paper, the filings kind of went in all different directions? That's the way we are. We're magnets, and we attract to us all kinds of different things. It's not that we're doing anything wrong. It's just how life works. The Lenten process, this spring cleaning, can be joyful. And we can make it easy if we choose to, as easy as just brushing away cobwebs. You know, I can't pretend, even to myself in my heart of hearts, that I don't have a few cobwebs to clear. So this year, I said yes. And I decided to do another Lent. And the one thing that I've come to know to be true is that before the feast must come the fast. Or perhaps a more contemporary way of putting it is out with the old, in with the new. So I'm going to share with you how I do it every day. You know, 2020 was quite the year for all of us. The pandemic and the isolation, the changes it brought about challenged us to see and think about things differently. For me, it was a year of significant challenges. My husband of 38 years, Greg, died from COVID in late May after being in intensive care for more than a month. About a month after his death, the walls of my bedroom collapsed. A major leak in the attic ended up being a complete renovation of the first floor of our home. I moved out to the ranch full time, grateful for a safe place to be, but far from the familiar and far from family and friends. In the quiet and isolation of the ranch, I made new friends. The flocks of birds that migrate and come to my feeders when they're in transit. They come every morning and they come every evening, and they're loud and noisy and joyful. There's a family of red fox that live in a grove of oaks right at the far end of my deck. And in my observation of them, I learned a lot about myself. And so when Lent came this year, I made a conscious decision. I committed to being still. You know, one of my favorite quotes from Psalms, from the scriptures, is the call to be still and know. Be still and know. And in that stillness, I allowed feelings and ideas and perceptions. I committed to no editing and no judging, just stillness. And I decided to do a spring cleaning of my soul. I recommitted to daily meditation and journaling. I created a list of people I wanted to stay connected with and made a commitment to make 2 calls every day. I learned new technology, which for me, I'm a Luddite, I will admit to it. It meant that I could stay connected with family and friends. I talk to my family every night on an app called House Party, and it's really been a magnificent connection for me. And at least 4 days a week, I clear out something. A dresser drawer, a closet, kitchen cabinets, file cabinets, bookshelves, and boy, did I realize how much stuff I collect. I donate some things, I repurpose others, and as I do, I acknowledge how grateful I am for all that I have and bless it as it goes out to serve others. I'm learning every day to fast from what does not serve me and feast for what is there for my greater good. So I went through my journal and I composed this list. And the list, the pattern that I'm using is I'm fasting from and feasting on. So here it goes. I fast from doubt and I feast on faith. I fast from fear and I feast on courage. I fast from insecurity and I feast on feeling confident. I fast from distraction and I feast on being fully present. I fast from loneliness and I feast on connection. I fast from hiding behind a mask and feast on being my authentic self. I fast from overreacting and I feast on responding thoughtfully. I fast from feeling stuck and I feast on moving forward, one day at a time, sometimes one step at a time. I fast from limitation and I feast on the sense of freedom. I fast from being rigid and I feast on developing my power of resilience. I fast from stress and I feast on serenity. I fast from chaos and I feast on order. I fast from scarcity and feast on the assurance of abundance. This one's the hardest one for me. I fast from worry and I feast on divine order. So I return to the questions I started with. Your imagination, using your imagination, how does that balloon feel? How do the mountain, the eagle, and the sunrise? And I think they feel expansive, exhilarated, energized, clear, free. And finally, I fast from the shadow of sorrow and feast on the power and the serenity of silence. And as I imagine my spiritual cleaning continues, I can touch that rainbow and I can joyfully slide through its colors.